My brigade. Let's head to Mexico, where the deadly feud between drug gangs is showing no sign of abating. Will Grant is a reporter for the BBC in Mexico, and he joins us now from Mexico City via webcam. Thanks for your time. Now, 49 people were killed in this latest incident. These killings are very gruesome, aren't they?
They really are. They're designed to intimidate and frighten not just the opposing gangs against the group that carried out this attack, but also the authorities and the local population. And I think it always achieves that. These bodies had been decapitated, the hands and feet had been cut off, and as you said, 49. So a massive number of people, their bodies dumped publicly in one of the main routes out of the city of Monterrey in the north, and clearly a very traumatic event for people of that city.
Will, this is part of a long-standing feud between rival gangs. What's the feud about?
Well, it's all about control of what they call plazas, which are the routes, the drug trafficking routes into the United States. One of the gangs that they believe may have carried out this attack is called Los Zetas, which is a vast criminal network operating mainly in the north of the country. And they are trying to extend their control right from production through to delivery in the US. So the Mexican cartels are growing in power in places like Colombia and Peru. So right from the coca plant through to the cocaine in the United States.
And this is just the latest in a spate of mass killings of equally gruesome nature that have happened recently. What are the authorities doing about it?
Well, by my reckoning, there have been 81 beheadings in Mexico in just over a week. So there have been 3 separate incidents. Today's was by far the worst. But the authorities are doing what they can. They're trying to investigate. They say they have an open mind as to who may have been behind the attacks, and the investigation is ongoing. But it's very, very difficult. There's a massive degree of impunity with the violence in this country. Only around 3 or 4% of murders actually end up in trial. 13,000 people were killed last year alone in drug-related violence. So it's a huge issue for the authorities, and we're in an election year. So whoever comes in as the president in July will be facing a massive task with regards to security in this country.
And the authorities have been quick to reassure civilians that they're not at risk. Let me ask you a personal question. Do you feel safe working as a journalist in Mexico?
Yes, in Mexico City, the situation is incomparable to somewhere like Monterrey. Monterrey is very violent, and Mexico City is now, strangely, given its reputation over the years, now become seen as something of a safe haven. But yes, journalists are targeted, and obviously going to difficult parts of the country is always complicated. A lot of journalists have been targeted recently as well. They tend to be local journalists writing about the drug cartels, and the drug cartels aren't happy with what they've published or whatever. And so it's a very, very rarefied and dangerous environment at the moment. It is a country which is going through a very, very difficult period. The government is convinced that its military approach, which they launched in 2006, is now beginning to reap results. Places like Ciudad Juarez in the north, which used to be the most violent city in the world, is now seeing a noticeable reduction in violence. So there are some positives for the government, but the worry is that it's also spreading to new areas that were previously peaceful, such as Monterrey, such as Veracruz in the east, and Guerrero in the west, where Acapulco is.
And Will, has it had any effect on tourism? Are tourists feeling unsafe in Mexico, or are they just not going?
Strangely enough, tourism has remained pretty buoyant because the way the government likes to suggest it would be like saying there was violence in Moscow, but you were in London. And the comparison they're trying to make is that you could be in Chiapas, where the Mayan ruins are and the beautiful beaches and so on in Mexico, and almost a country away from the kind of violence that is affecting the residents of Monterrey and other cities. That said, we have seen an increase of violence in places like Acapulco, and I think tourists are more reticent in recent months when obviously these awful headlines are terrible events, and the feeling is, I think, from some people that it could affect them. So I think we'll see what the numbers are at the end of the year in terms of the government's tourism push, but I think it might be quite a complicated picture.
Will Grant, we appreciate your time this morning.